Some stories are thousands of years old, but they feel like they could have been written yesterday. And that's because they tap into a fundamental human struggle that is, well, just timeless. And one of the most powerful examples of this is the constant battle between long-term faith and the lure of a quick fix.
I mean, come on, we've all been there, right? You start the year with the absolute best intentions. You're going to eat healthier, save more money, be more committed to something important. You've got this long-term goal in your sights, but then temptation hits. A quick, easy fix shows up, and all of a sudden that long-term vision gets a little blurry.
This right here, this is the universal conflict in a nutshell. On one side, you have the disciplined path that leads to a better future, and on the other, you've got that instant satisfaction that's staring you right in the face. Believe it or not, this exact same tension is at the absolute heart of an ancient story about a deity named Baal.
So let's take that modern conflict we all know so well and look at its ancient parallel. For the early Israelites, the ultimate quick fix, the ultimate temptation was the worship of Baal. But who exactly was he, and what made him so incredibly appealing?
Okay, so Baal, whose name literally just means lord or owner, was a huge deal in the ancient Near East. And if you think about it, for a society that was completely dependent on agriculture and the weather, a god who controlled storms and fertility wasn't just some abstract idea. He felt like a practical, everyday necessity.
And this really gets to the heart of it, his value proposition, if you will. See, Baal wasn't offering some far-off promise. He offered tangible solutions to life or death problems. When your crops are failing and your family is hungry, the promise of rain right now is unbelievably powerful. He was the god of immediate results.
So, here's the crucial point. The choice wasn't really between a good god and an evil god. It was a choice between faith in a single, unseen God who promised long-term deliverance and a local deity who seemed to offer immediate, tangible benefits. It was the ancient version of choosing that sugary snack over the healthy diet. But here's the thing. This decision wasn't a one-time event. The biblical narrative describes this repeating pattern, a four-stage cycle that really illustrates the ongoing human struggle between devotion and temptation. So let's break down exactly how this cycle works.
Here it is. This is the roadmap of that struggle. It always starts with a relapse into those old, easy habits. That leads to some pretty negative consequences, which then sparks this moment of clarity, repentance. And finally, that results in deliverance. But, as we're about to see, the end of the cycle is often just the beginning of the next one.
So the cycle kicks off with a relapse, Whenever a new challenge popped up, a drought, a threat from a neighboring tribe, the allure of Baal's quick fix just became overwhelming. This is that moment of weakness, right? Like when you're super stressed and you just abandon your diet for that junk food. But that quick fix, it always came with a price. The story draws a direct line from turning to Baal to experiencing real-world disaster. And this wasn't just about some kind of divine punishment. It symbolized the natural consequences of choosing an empty promise over a solid foundation.
It's only when they hit rock bottom that the turning point finally arrives. This is the stage of repentance. And it was often sparked by spiritual guides, prophets like Gideon or Samuel, who would show up and challenge the people, reminding them of the path they'd abandoned.
And that return to faith, well, it leads to deliverance. Peace is restored, the land flourishes again, and it seems like the lesson has been learned. True lasting prosperity only comes from unwavering commitment. But the very fact that this is a cycle tells us that this peace, it's often temporary.
Now, this entire spiritual conflict comes to a head in one of the most dramatic stories you'll find in the Hebrew Bible, the ultimate showdown on Mount Carmel. This was it, the final exam. A direct contest between the promise of a quick fix and the power of long-term faith.
Okay, so picture this. The prophet Elijah stands up and challenges hundreds of Baal's prophets. For hours, they plead and shout and beg their God to send fire. But there's just silence. Nothing. Then, Elijah makes a single, simple call to Yahweh, the God of the Israelites, who answers instantly and overwhelmingly, first with fire from the sky, and then with the very rain that Baal was supposed to control.
This moment right here, it just encapsulates the story's entire message. The contest on Mount Carmel is the ultimate proof point in this whole allegory. It's this dramatic, undeniable demonstration that the quick fixes and worldly temptations, everything Baal represented, are, in the end, completely powerless.
So in the end, the narrative leaves zero room for doubt. When it came down to who had true power over the elements, fire, water, and life itself, the answer was crystal clear. There was only one.
So after a victory that decisive, the cycle must have been broken for good, right? I mean, case closed. Well, this is where the allegory reveals its most profound and maybe its most relatable lesson for us today.
And here it is, the most profound lesson of all. Even after witnessing an absolute miracle, the story tells us that the temptation to go back to the old, easy way, it never really disappears. The struggle is ongoing, and that's exactly why it's a cycle.
And that's really the ultimate takeaway. The story of Baal isn't just about ancient gods. It's an allegory for the constant effort it takes to stick to any long-term commitment. It requires vigilance, a continuous recommitment to the goal, whether that's your faith, your health, or your personal growth, to avoid sliding back into what the texts call great distress.
And this brings us right back to where we started. The ancient Israelites were tempted by a God who promised rain and prosperity. It really leaves us with a question to think about. What are the quick fixes, the promises of instant gratification that tempt us today? What are the modern Baals that pull us away from our long-term goals?